Hello, everybody. Welcome to Being Becca Live. It is I, Becca Lawyer Hector, here. And as you see, I'm wearing my Spectrum Women shirt. Oh, I should adjust my camera. I guess it's a little high. There it is, my Spectrum Women shirt, because as soon as I'm done here on live stream, I have to record asking Spectrum Women for November. So yay, I'm ready to do that as well. I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late, but you autistics out there will know exactly what I'm talking about when I tell you this. So I got here and I was like 15 minutes early, right? I was all ready and all set, and I had my computer all set up and all of that stuff. And I was like, I just got to waste a few minutes while I'm waiting for it to be time. And so I started to look through my emails. And then I was like, oh, there's an error there, and little things like I was like making corrections on things. And before I knew it, I looked up and it was 11:03, which is what happens to us when we hyper focus. We just have no concept of the passing of time. And so I apologize for being a few minutes late, but autism happens, right? Ooh, that's a good shirt. Autism happens. Yay, here I am, focusing right now on what I'm doing. So yay, CV, thank you so much for making it today. And I love it when you guys spend some time with me on Being Becca Live. I love that I get to see you guys twice a week. Just I kind of pop in with you guys on Sunday, and it's a real low-key, just us kind of vibe to it. And then it's a little bit more structured when I do Being Becca Live, or like topic oriented and things like that. But Being Becca Live is where we talk about the challenges of being an autistic adult alive right now, and not when research catches up. So, hey, Burnett, hey, Taz, thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate it so much. I've been really hyper aware. Just a side note, because I know that some of you guys use differing pronouns out there who watch. And so I just want to preface and say that I use the term guys as in like units. So I don't mean it in a gender oriented way or to exclude anybody. And if it makes anybody uncomfortable, please let me know. But I just realized that I do that very frequently in the way that a lot of people use the R word, not meaning to be offensive, but it's old in their vocabulary from when they grew up. And so if guys is offensive, I guess tell me, but I think of it as units. I just want to be like, hey, units, it's me. And so units, I would say, but guys sounds more familiar to me, and like we're actually friends. And so I just say that. And so if it bothers anybody, please let me know. I've just become aware that it is in my vocabulary kind of frequently. Anyway, so yes, Burnett just said, I do that too, but probably because I don't think about gender. What an interesting sentence, because it just made me realize that I don't think about gender. And I guess that's why I don't think about that stuff. Like when someone asks me my pronouns, I want to be like, whatever, who cares what it is? Like, I don't care. But there are people who do care, and it does matter. And I've become aware of gender because other people have made me aware of gender. And so I just want to make sure that I'm not being offensive on the regular, because, you know, other people offend me and they don't know they're doing it. So whatever. Checking in with those of you who use differing pronouns. But back to the topic at hand and what we struggle with being adults on the autism spectrum today. So here's the deal, you guys. Today I want to talk about something that is, as you know, I usually talk about the things that are weighing heavy on my mind and that I'm thinking about kind of really pensively, and it's going through the machine right now. Because as I talk to you guys about it, sometimes I figure out different layers to it. And as I talk to you guys about it, you often give me, I banged my head there the other day and I didn't think anything happened, but you guys just like a bump. Ooh. Anyway, so any case, I think about these things and then I'm like, I want to talk to it. I want to talk about it with my friends, my autistic friends, not just any friends. And that's what this space is to me. It's an opportunity to sort of talk to my community so that I check in, and it's making sure, as Doug and I, if you watch InfoDump, like to say, is it a Doug thing? Is it a Becca thing? Is it a thing? Right. And so that's just what I've been, thinking about. So here's where I'm at. As you guys know, I'm someone who struggles with seasonal depression. I feel like at this time of year, I talk about it all the time. And the reason I talk about it all the time is because it's annoying me all the time these months. And I'm thinking about it and then thinking about it, trying to learn better ways to not master it, but to get through it well, because I apparently, it's not something I can avoid entirely. Apparently, it's not attached to the rest of my well-being, but more a biochemical reaction to the change of the season. So in looking at it that way, it's like, okay, it's just something that happens for me in the way that your hair turns gray and all of that stuff, right? So that's how I've been looking at it and kind of functioning about it for the last couple of years. And last year I did really well. I did this new plan where I limited my schedule for starting in early, like end of October, November, December, January, right? Well, this year I've decided that October and early November were a little soon. I wasn't quite feeling it yet, which brought me to a place of, hey, that means that I can't make a rule about it. I have to be a little bit flexible about the seasonal depression, because on years like this year where we haven't gotten real snow yet, it hasn't been really wintry out yet. We've had a lot of days of bright and brilliant sunshine and t-shirt days and things like that. So I don't think I felt the full weight of the seasonal depression in the way that I usually do. But upcoming this weekend, in fact, is when our time shift happens here in the United States and we fall back in the winter time. And it is going to mean more hours of darkness, which is going to mean for me, right? That it's going to be even harder to push through all of the depression and the fact that it's seasonal and all of those things. So what I decided is, that's the one lesson from this year, is that I have to be flexible about the start time. And so since we've had all of this luck, I've sort of been able to make it through October and just this beginning of November without really needing to cut my schedule. All right. So that was one lesson learned from last year. The other thing learned from last year was that reducing my schedule helped with my mental health through the depression, because it didn't layer the guilt on. So if I wasn't feeling able to do things and I had to cancel them last year, or the year before rather, I would deal with a lot of the emotional reverb from needing to cancel things on people because I realistically could not do them, right? And so what I did last year was reduce those responsibilities so that I felt that way less, and that worked. Okay, so this year I'm trying out all of these new things, blah, blah, blah. And I am kind of working with this new start time and all of that stuff. And things are okay. But the last week, I'd say, I really have begun to feel the true depths of, like, when it really gets there. So it's like, it's really here now. Okay. And so I've really begun my lockdown. That's what I want to start calling it. My seasonal depression lockdown, my really limiting of the spoons, my not expending too much energy in other places. So like, I'm going to go and record Asking Spectrum Women for November, and there won't be a December and January one, because I know I won't have the spoons, and I'll let people know in advance. And then I don't have to feel guilty and all of that fun stuff. Right. So I'm doing all of those responses and doing all of those things. And I'm sure that will make me feel better. But it has had me really thinking about when, in thinking about when does that seasonal depression really hit and what triggers it and when I should start this lockdown thing. I began to really think about what is the difference between sadness and depression, right? Because most of the year I feel a sense of sadness about certain things, or there are days of the month or whatever, like my birthday, for all of the same reasons I struggle for the holiday with the holidays, I struggle with my birthday. And so there are days during that time where I feel sad, or I will get nostalgic or reminiscent about things. And I feel a like soul sadness, a heart sadness. But to me, that heart and soul sadness is different than the depression that comes in during October, November, December, right? Whatever, or November, December, January, whatever the year looks like, right? And so in that space of what, so it's like, I want to start my lockdown when the depression starts, not if I'm just having days of sadness. Okay, like, you get it? So I started to make that differentiation, and I was like, well, what is that difference? Like, how can I better quantify that difference between sadness and depression? And more so, right, in thinking about sadness and depression, what is their relation to burnout, right, and shutdowns, right? Because we talk about, in depression land, wholly separate from autism land, we talk about depressive burnouts, right? And we don't call them burnouts, we call them depressive episodes. But they look nearly identical, at least from the outside, right? The why behind them being different, but on the outside, they look a lot like a burnout, right? And so I started to think about that whole procession of things and why I feel like they're attached, when really depression and a burnout are so separate, right? Or I've categorized them so separately in my head, right? Oh, cats. Why do they always want to get out when you close the door? I don't understand. Do I have to get up, kitty kitty? I don't think so. Um, so, I was thinking about that, right? And how there's a difference, right? And so to me, sadness is more momentary, meaning maybe it lasts a day or a couple of days, or sometimes even just a few moments or a few hours, right? But it is temporary. It has a temporary feel to it, right? Not that you don't feel it deeply, but you only feel it deeply for this like temporary amount of time. And I feel like that's what sadness is. And that sadness is usually kicked off by something very specific. You're feeling sad in relation to a very specific event, right? And to me, depression is very different from that. It feels different, it looks different, it smells different to me. All kinds of crazy things happen to me, and she's going to make me let her out. So hang on one second. Joe, do you see Void? Look at Void. Okay. Go. Oh, I return. In any case, so I was thinking about that stuff. And of course, I had to pull up an article just to be like, are you a crazy person or are they separate? And that kind of thing. So some of the symptoms of depression include, here's a little article, right? Constant feelings of sadness. So you see that the first bullet point is about how sadness stops becoming temporary. Immediately, it's like the sadness isn't temporary. That's immediately a sign that it's depression versus sadness, right? When you get cranky and irritable, fatigue, right? Changes in your sleep and eating patterns, right? Some of us eat more, some of us eat less, some of us sleep more, some of us sleep less, right? Difficulty concentrating and focusing, loss of interest and enthusiasm for things that provide pleasure. This is definitely something that happens to me pretty on the regular with the depression. It's like things that would normally bring me joy or create joy for me are things that they feel too hard. They feel too hard to do when I'm feeling truly depressed, right? Feelings of deep and unwarranted guilt. I want to add with that guilt often comes anxiety. So I think that's part of the reason that anxiety and depression are such good friends, because when your depression kicks up, your anxiety kind of gets fueled. It gets food. It gets to feed off of those feelings of guilt and shame and all of those things, right? You start to get physical symptoms such as headaches and body aches that don't really have a cause. Like it's not like you exercised the day before, right? And so those things start to happen, right? Feelings of worthlessness. This one is one of my big bullets. Okay. That is where my brain goes in depression. It doesn't go there in sadness, right? It only goes there in depression. And so those feelings of no matter how hard I work, I'm not making a difference. No matter how hard I try, things aren't moving forward. I'm not doing a good job. And, what am I doing here? And they often lead to that feeling of what the fuck am I doing here? And why am I here? Is there a reason? Right. And so we slide right into constant thoughts of death. Right? That be the beginning of those suicidal ideations, right? About not being here, right? And then, of course, when we're truly in the depths of depression, we have a lot of suicidal thoughts, very specific and/or actions, right? Attempts at suicide or successes at suicide, right? And so that picture of depression is so different to me than the picture of sadness. Sadness has sometimes has regret to it. Sadness sometimes has, thoughts of missing people. It has, sadness has other feelings attached to it, but it's not to this depth. It's not to this like octopus sucking the life out of you feeling, which is exactly how depression feels. It feels like there is like, I don't know, 7 layers of jello between you and the world. And in order to interact with the world, you need to get through that jello, right? And so it's work to get out of your depression. It's effort to do anything, regardless of what the activity is. And it's effort to move yourself through and out of it, right? It's effort. And it's effort to keep it at a limit that you can tolerate, right? And sometimes we do that through medication, but it is definitely, right, like a cycle. But sadness can live on its own. Sadness can live and be fine all by itself. It never has to grow from sadness. Sadness can occur separately from depression. Depression, however, to me, cannot exist without those feelings of sadness, right? So the sadness is part of it. It's like the sadness is the beginning of a snowball. And then the rest of it is just as it's rolling down the hill and getting bigger and bigger, it's picking up those other symptoms, right? And that's sort of how I envision it. And I know, here's the fucked up part, is that I know I'm at the beginning. I'm the tiny snowball right now. And I've got months ahead of me of becoming a bigger and bigger snowball and of having to fight against all of those feelings. And that's what I want to talk about specifically, is the work it takes, right, to get out of that depression, and the work it takes to live through it, to push through it, to survive through it, to try and get through it as best as possible, is all effort that at the rest of the year, you don't feel that love, especially with seasonal. So depression, like, so for the rest of the year, I don't feel what I feel when I have seasonal depression layered onto my regular depression. Some people have this kind of depression all year long, right? It depends on who you are. So like that is, to me, it's exhausting all the time. And so when we talk about depression, we talk about that feeling of fatigue, right? But I don't think it's just a feeling of fatigue. I think it's actually fatigue because of the energy it takes to just want to wake up when you are feeling depressed, that it takes to shower and go out and do your job or whatever it is, take care of your kids, take care of your pets, right? All of that takes energy to fight through when you have the jello mold of depression hanging over you, which I picture a meme of myself now with like a green jello mold from my shoulders up, right? That goes to about here, right? And that's what depression looks like and feels like to me, right? And so it's like a lot of it to me, I feel like it's constant work, right? And especially if you're someone who doesn't want to give in to the depression, who is still in the fight for it, right? And I always feel like I'm in the fight for it in the beginnings of this seasonal depression. And then towards the end, I just can't wait for it to be over because I can't fight anymore. I'm tired, right? And that's not to say that my depression doesn't sneak around at other times a year, but what it's like is like a whole extra layer of jello when the seasonal depression hits, right? And so what I want to talk about is now burnout. And I think our burnout is so directly related to our mental health and so directly related to how we are feeling about ourselves and in our bodies that I cannot even begin to tell you. Okay. So no, we know it happens from sensory overload that's ignored. We know it happens from stimming that gets kind of kept inside. We know we get it from masking and all those kind of things. We know we get it from generalized adulting out in a neurotypical world and things like that. But what I want to talk about is how sometimes our mental health can kick off burnout for us. Because when I am feeling depressed, it is so much effort to just fight through the depression that I know I'm limited in what the capacity I have to do other things, like do live streams or asking Spectrum Women or whatever it is, right? I have a limited capacity for that because a lot of my spoons now go to digging through the jello, right? And so because I'm using spoons on digging through the jello, of course I'm tired. The problem is that on the outside, it doesn't look like I have anything to be tired from, right? Because no one else is experiencing that jello experience except for me, right? And so I'm tired, but the world doesn't see it as a justified tired, right? And so we push ourselves through it until it's a legitimate tired, right? And when we do that, we're creating a total soup for burnout to exist, right? We have set in all the ingredients for burnout. That's what we just did, right? By not acknowledging that the fatigue of depression comes from fighting through it all the time, right? And when it's heavy, that's exhausting. And so you can do less other things. We have to rebalance our spoons in the depression, right? It's like how we talk about when we've had a really high sensory day, right? And it's been a sensory overload day, but the next day we really need to take some time to recharge from that. Well, why don't we treat ourselves with that same kindness when we spent an entire day fighting through depression? Why isn't that a legitimate use of our spoons and finding us depleted in the next day? I don't know. But I'm going to stop doing what I do right now, which is not counting those spoons. I've ignored those spoons because they're not part of my regular part of the year. Well, bullshit, right? They are part of this 3 months of the year, and spoons get dedicated to them. And that means I need to recalculate everything else, right? Just to acknowledge and account for the spoons it takes to fight through the depression every day, the spoons it takes to take my medication correctly, to make sure I'm doing any other supports, to sit out in the sunshine, no matter how fucking cold it is outside, right? And all of that stuff. But that's work, man. It takes a lot of work. And I have, up until this point, not acknowledged that work. Literally until like today or yesterday, right? Have not acknowledged the work it takes just to dig through the jello. And because of that, I've never quite gotten, right, this few months right. I haven't gotten that balance right because I wasn't accounting for those spoons. So it's like my math was all off. How can I balance it if my math is all off? I can't, right? And so now I've got these other spoons that I'm accounting for, and other decisions have to be made. Like I'm probably going to have to let some more things go than I thought I was going to, right? And maybe it's because of the amount of spoons that they use. And so you see how the overall arching concept of what I do about limiting how on my plate and all of that stuff for these 3 months can extend this far and can get this specific, right? If I'm not accounting for the spoons I'm using to fight through my depression, then I'm not counting correctly. And so I will never find the balance until I count all of the spoons, right? And so those spoons have gone unacknowledged for like 45 years. Unacknowledged, the work that it takes to go through and to wake up every day feeling depressed for 3 months, just fighting for the day that you wake up and it feels a little bit lighter, right? So I've just been thinking about that because a lot of my, my smaller burnouts have felt like extension of depression. And I think that's why. I think that same feeling of utter just spoonlessness, and like not even a spoon to use for the desire of a thought, like just sucked dry burnout, is the same way that I feel after 3 months of fighting through depression, right? Or even not even 3 months, forget it. It could be 2 weeks of fighting through the depression. And so now I have this just constant sadness layer on my, not sadness, let me not use that word. I have this constant jello layer, right, over my life that I'm going to have to fight through for the next 3 months. And then some days it's thicker than others, and it's usually thicker towards the end of the 3 months and all of that stuff. But when I wake up and I say to myself, God, I'm so fucking tired, what I need to start saying to myself is, I'm so fucking depressed, right? Because I'm depressed, and because I'm fighting through it, I'm tired. Right? There's a linear thought there. The end product is tired, but the why behind the tired is an actual lack of sleep. It's not stress. It's not anything else. It's depression, right? It's the fighting through it that is so fucking exhausting. Why it makes it that much harder, right? And what is layered on top of that is that we all know now, or I know now, and I've tried to teach you guys that inertia just makes that hole deeper. And so in the fight to stay in motion through the jello, like running in a swimming pool, man, it's exhausting, right? That's how it feels, is like running in a swimming pool. Really hard, pushes your energy and your muscles to their limit in a way that running on a regular street just doesn't, right? That pull on your body. I can't think of any more ways to describe it for you guys, but it's so distressing. And so I do my best to use the time that I'm feeling distressed by it to process why. And I think this is a nice big picture. So what I'm feeling these days is a lot of those symptoms on that list that I read off to you guys, which I guess I could put that article in. You could find it in a gazillion places. It's basically like a breakdown of the DSM and how the DSM kind of symptoms, what that looks like in real life, right? And so you can find it anywhere. It's not some kind of miraculous new article that came out. But I want us to think about that stuff because sadness and depression are different. And so we don't want to confuse sadness for depression. It's not. And sadness is a good thing, right? It means we have feelings, we care about stuff, right? Whereas depression, in its worst, is like a death sentence, right? Genuinely, I have been, and I think a lot of us who deal with depression have felt suicidal ideations, if not had suicidal attempts, right? Because it is just that bleak. It is just that exhausting. And so my learn from this is that when I wake up in the morning and I'm saying I'm tired, what I really mean is I'm depressed. And that means that when I have to do anything in my life, I need to add on an extra spoon just for fighting through through the depression to do it. In other words, if I usually say it takes me 3 spoons to shower, during this time of year, I need to say it takes 4 spoons, because just to push through the depression to care enough to shower, right, takes a spoon by itself. Right. And so now I have to acknowledge the spoons that I take, and I have to add those in. So my calculations are correct. And maybe this year I'll get a little bit closer to balance. And maybe this year I'll do it a little bit better than last year. And I think that's where I'm at. And so those are my thoughts. I'm going to catch up with you guys in chat because stuff is happening and I like that. And I want to catch up over there, but I don't want to go too long. So here I go. There's definitely a difference between sadness and depression. Depression leaves you with zero motivation. Sadness, Gus, just dampens your enthusiasm. Right, exactly. So it just it's different. And it feels different to those of us who know we have depression, right? Concentration and focus are iffy and affected by a lot of things, including sadness and depression, right? And that's what I mean. When our sadness and depression are worse, or really when our depression is worse, right? Because sadness is momentary, right? We need to use more spoons to do things. And so we feel iffy about all of it, right? It's like crazy. Yeah, Joe says the spiral is so familiar, isn't it, Joe? Like when you read it delineated out, right? It's like, oh shit. And then when you're in the beginning of it, like I am right now, you're like, oh shit, that's all coming. And that's how I feel. And sometimes that adds to the depression. It's like, I know all of those feelings are coming, and how depressing is that I can't do anything about it, right? And that just adds to the depression and adds to the depression. It's just a lovely depression soup, which then gives me anxiety that it's never going to get better. And then blah, 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 blah. Right. And so I try to do things about that, like not stay isolated, get out and do chores, even if I hate them, talk to people online, even if I don't feel like talking, little things like that. But also making sure that I take care of myself and I do the things that I know make me feel better, like not letting my house fall to shit. Right. And that takes precedent over social. It just does. And so that's sort of where I'm sitting with all of it, and kind of how I'm rolling through it right now. But I really want us to think about really the difference between sadness and depression and the connection to burnout. Right. And that whole piece, because I feel like that's a piece that neurotypicals don't have to deal with. That it's a piece that, it's the reason we count spoons and they don't have to, right? And so that's kind of what I wanted to think about today, because I really need to start acknowledging the fact that I am tired, and I'm tired because if I got up today and I put a bra on and I put on a clean shirt, right, and I brushed my hair and whatnot and brushed my teeth, that takes me more spoons, because I am just pushing through depression to get there. Yes, everything takes over social, says Joe. Right, because that's true. That is the thing that is the most, that is like a privilege. That is a pleasure. That is a reward. It lays there, social. It's like not important in your upkeep necessarily, especially for those of us who aren't socially inclined, right? So of course it's the first thing we drop. But anyway, so, that's sort of the depression soup I'm in. Those are the things that I've been thinking about. And I wanted to share them with you guys. Jigsaw, yes, everything takes over. So including jigsaw and craft baths and YouTube videos, says Joe. And I love it, right? Because that's how we're caring for ourselves. We know those things can occasionally recharge us. If not, they definitely don't use spoons, right? And for that, it's important that we acknowledge them. And so I thank you guys. Thank you for joining me today talking about this, and for your spoons to think about it, because I've been thinking about it. And so I love that you joined me to do this. I love this time. I love when we get to kind of pick things apart together. And so before I go, let me do all of the business reporting news that I have to do. Of course, the recording of the October Self-Defined Living Seminar is up if you would like to see it. It's about spoon and time management, very important. And I really love this presentation because I had a lot of different thoughts about how it might come out, and actually liked the final product, though it can use some tweaking, but I really enjoyed the content piece for me. Anyway, So go check that out. Of course, you can while you're on my website, which is where you can get that recording on the Self-Defined Living Seminar tab of beccalori.com. That's LORY.com. And you can go there and check that out. You can also check out the course while you're there, my writing while you're there, though I have to update it. And what else goes on there? My Redbubble store, the Ko-Fi. You can sign up for my free newsletter, Monthly Musings, and connect with the rest of my social media. You can also use the contact page, which emails me directly, or you can email me directly at info@beccalori.com. This is my goal. This is my pledge, my ask, my request, my dream from you guys through this seasonal depression. I have set a goal for myself that I feel like is reasonable and realistic. I've set a realistic time frame of the end of December because I need to make sure that I'm still moving, but not doing things that are too hard. And so what I'm doing for this month and a half, or well, really it's 2 months, is asking you guys to help me. Please help me get to 1,000 subscribers. I would love it. I am halfway there and I just need to get the other half. And so in order to get there, I am asking you to please thumbs up my videos, share my videos, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, share my videos with other people who you think should subscribe. And please, 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 let me know that you're doing that, because I am going to be doing a series of giveaways and a series of contests from right here in my office, just on the YouTube channel. So if you are interested in winning some of my giveaways, like one-on-ones with me, like signed copies of Spectrum Women, like a free run of the course, right? I think I'm going to give away one free recorded version and one free live version of the course. Those are going to be my first place prizes, my master prizes, and then I'm going to give away some little things like that, some like the book and such like that, and some other things that I'm sure I will come up with, but I'm only going to be doing it through the YouTube channel. So you have to subscribe here in order to be in on those giveaways. So if you have seen the link on my other social media and you are now here on my channel, please go ahead and subscribe. I see the people that subscribe. I am not so famous and high numbered that I do not notice when you subscribe. So thank you to the last few people who saw my ask online and did subscribe, because numbers are going up, and I would love, 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 love all of your help. Those of you who have learned something from me, who enjoy my content, who watch regularly, who participate regularly, if you could please share the channel, share my videos, the things that you love, and help me get to 1,000 subscribers. That is my goal for November and December. Thank you guys, because I want to start out 2022 with 1,000 subscribers on my channel and ready to tackle another run of Self-Defined Living. That's all I've got for you guys today. Please join me next Wednesday for the next Being Back Alive right here on this channel on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And of course, I'll be back on Sunday with the next Growing Gratitude, which is where I very publicly talk about the things I'm grateful for in my life, no matter how crappy my week was. And so we'll be doing that on Sunday. And then, of course, I'll see you on Wednesday for the next Being Back Alive. Until then, I will see you guys out and about on the interweb. Get out there and seek joy, create joy, share joy, all the joys. And please make sure you thumbs up me and share and subscribe and all of that stuff. Thank you guys for your support. Have an amazing rest of your week. Bye.